His Royal Highness Prince Ghazi and the organizers of this space for inviting me to be part of this conversation. So I'm currently working on a first book project, right, about the range of ways that 20th century Black U.S. Afro-Protestant leaders and communities engaged and disengaged historic Palestine and Palestinian life. The end of this project considers 21st century implications for such things and the possibilities for solidarity making, particularly between Africana peoples and peoples of Palestinian descent in the United States. So I am an historian of ideas, principally, and as such, much of my own work on these questions is historical, it's genealogical. But because I am an historian of ideas, principally, much of this for me is also heavily conceptual work. And I will attempt to offer a bit of both here today. So in this space, right, I am most curious about the orbit of questions around what I call a kind of secular soteriology. How does the idea of democracy, right, broadly, certainly including but not exclusive to U.S. democracy, how does it in different contexts invest itself through the rhetorical tools of civil religion as a kind of redemptive claim? A claim that presumably allows communities under siege to access something peculiarly salvific. In other words, the collective memory of a nation, or then a nation state, its origin myths, the ways that it imagines itself as protector, defender, the symbols that invoke its own divine and moral authority, right? The state's own presumption of authority as the telos of creation, right? State authority as telos of creation, or even the rituals that bind these politics together. These ebbs and flows are all profoundly theological. They're profoundly theological, and they are also ebbs and flows that bind the United States and the State of Israel together in a singular discursive orbit, I think. Another way of thinking about this is insofar as the United States and the Israeli state both mobilize myth, operationalize symbol, mechanize the deliberately ambiguous use of religious language, etc. And insofar as they mobilize all these things as a kind of on-ramp into political allegiance, one of the most devastating violences perpetuated therein is a theological violence. It's a theological one. The question of allegiance to the U.S. nation and then the nation state, of course, has always been a complicated one for Africana peoples. And complicated relations within the nation state have historically, again, for persons of African descent in the United States, also meant rather complicated relationships with questions of indigeneity, land sovereignty, or the human rights of other marginalized people groups. This is not to say, of course, that cross-group solidarity does not exist, right? Obviously it does, and it has. But this is to say that these histories, they're layered, they're nuanced, they're not uncomplicated, just as